All right. Hello, everybody. Let's wait a few seconds to people to join in. I have a guest coming in. He's trying to connect. So, Matthew, while we're waiting for the guest, can you click on your phone again, see if it works?
Well, I'm connected on my phone.
Nope.
But the audio does not seem to work on the
How
phone.
about disconnect your phone and then let's talk on the phone. Maybe that'll work. Since I'm connected on the phone, just call me.
Okay.
While Matthew is getting ready, welcome everybody. This is Mike Patel with Home Savvy Central, my YouTube channel. And this is the first time I'm doing this YouTube at 1 o'clock. I switched it from 4:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. And I wanted to see how the time was. I got recommendations that they wanted to listen to me during lunchtime and not in the evening. So today we have a very interesting topic. Matthew, can you hear me or can you call me on the phone? And
I'm calling you on the phone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now using my phone.
Okay.
But the audio does not seem to be picking up my microphone
Right.
on the actual.
Well, hopefully they can hear it. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to put you on speaker, and maybe that'll go to the audience. So sorry about the technical difficulty, but what we're going to talk about today is the impact of tariffs, not only on the interest rate, but specifically the interest of the tariffs on you. And what I mean when I'm pointing at you, I don't mean to point at you. I mean the typical home seller or the home buyer. So that's what I want to talk about. Matthew, how are we on the audio?
Well, we're going to do it this way. What I'm doing now is I'm muting the computer so I don't hear everything. Then I don't hear everything you say twice.
Okay. So now let's test it. Can you hear me clearly now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Cool. So let's just go that way. It is what it is. So I want to get started and see what happened and why this topic is so important. I know I did the same topic last week, but this one is different. Why is it different today? Well, let's talk about, let me share a screen and show you why this is so different. I'm going to share my screen quickly and I'm going to show you, let's see here.
And this might make the audio clearer.
Very clear. Very clear. Can you see the screen and the map, Matthew?
I can, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that. And I'm glad I can hear you better. Hopefully the audience can hear you as well. But if not, this is so important because what happened on April 2nd, that was last week, it was Liberation Day. And Trump administration increased or threw tariffs on a lot of countries and most of the countries. And then what happened on April 3rd and what's happening today, the Dow Jones took a tumble, the NASDAQ took a tumble, the S&P took a tumble. International global stock markets are down today. And we're not here to talk about stocks and inflation and economy. I just want to give you what is the starting point of what may be a change in the housing directions. It has been going up and up and up and up all these years. And all of a sudden, we are seeing a downturn. So to show you what's happening here, let me go back to the Dow Jones Industrial. Let's go to like 5 days. What happened? If you see here on 4/7, it's way down right now. If you go back 6 months ago, Dow Jones was as high as, according to this, 44,713. As of today, it's down to 37,000. So Matthew, what's your take on this when it comes to the impact it will have on housing? As a realtor, as somebody in real estate.
Yeah. And I'm also a mortgage lender, so it has a tremendous impact. If there's a kind of a double-sided impact from it in terms of housing. On the one hand, all of this is causing more people, when the stock market's going down like this, it's causing more people to put money in treasuries, which is deflating the value of the treasuries and causing some lower 10-year treasury rates. The mortgage rates tend to follow the 10-year treasury. So as those treasury rates come down, so too will mortgage rates, generally speaking. the lower mortgage rates can actually help the housing market as far as freeing things up and making, addressing the affordability issue. The bad part is that if this continues, it's the why it's happening that's a problem. Because if it's happening because if it's gonna push us into a recession or a depression where people are losing their jobs and have no confidence in the economy, that's going to have a very negative effect on the housing market. So we kind of, we may get some benefit in the short run from a little softening of the interest rates. But in the long run, if this continues for any long, substantial period of time, I would anticipate that it will actually cause some negativity.
So a lot of things going on, right? A lot of things going on. So on one hand, and I'm going to read a report out, and like I said, just as a disclosure for those who are joining or watching this recording, this is not a political statement or political discussion. We're just trying to figure out what the tariff are going to have an impact on the housing market now, in 2 months, and in 2 years. Not only I'm in Orange County, not only in Orange County, or Matthew is from Atlanta. By the way, Matthew, before we go on, why don't you introduce yourself? I'm sorry, we had technical difficulties. Just say who you are, where you are, so the audience knows who you are. Matthew is a second-time guest on my show. So,
sure. Name is Matthew Scher, and I've been a realtor for 21 years in the Atlanta metro area. And I'm also now, as of the last couple of years, a licensed mortgage loan originator. So kind of a one-stop shop for people over here that, buy, sell, finance, and refinance.
Right. Correct. Okay, cool. So one of the things I want to talk, the topic of this live broadcast is brace for impact, how tariffs, inflation, and recession will hit you home. So when I say that, I'm going to repeat that again, Matthew. Brace for impact, how tariffs, inflation, and recession will hit you home. What's one thing that stands out to you that if you're a homeowner or a home buyer that really grabs you from that topic or from that title?
Well, I think the title, The Brace for Impact, is kind of implying a negative negative connotation. It might be kind of a slanted title, potentially politically slanted. I don't know. I'm not accusing anyone, but I think from that title, I can kind of gather what your thoughts are. But the reality is, it's just, there are a lot of people that believe that the hype that this is temporary pain for long-term gain, that it's just evening the playing field, and that it's going to bring manufacturing to back to the United States more. These things, I'm not fully convinced when I look at it objectively. I wish that could be the case. I really do. And if it is, I will be the first one to eat my word. But I don't see that happening for so many reasons as far as increasing the manufacturing here. First of all, it takes a lot of time to just move manufacturing. It does not happen overnight. And if we keep up with these tariffs without the manufacturing, we're going to be in such dire straits by the time they could even open any plants here. The other thing is, the whole administration has been so back and forth and unpredictable with these. Tariffs are on one day, off the next, on the next. To expect auto manufacturers and other big companies to build entire plants based on this trajectory, they're just not going to do it because it's too volatile, and they don't know, Trump could wake up one day and have a different opinion. And now they've spent billions of dollars building plants that they can't even use. And the other thing is, our labor costs here are so high compared to those countries that these companies, unless they're willing to shrink their profits, or if they are willing to have their CEOs make less money, okay, so they could pay more to their working people in the factory, then yeah, that would be a utopian situation. But I don't see the CEOs taking pay cuts, and I don't see the company being willing to sell cars for, or whatever it is, for a lower profit margin.
Right.
And if they have to pay the, even what the wages are going to require, the cost of the product cannot remain the same, or they will not be a profitable company anymore.
Right.
So.
Here's how I'm looking at it. And like I said, I'm no expert in economics and politics and Dow Jones and tariffs, but here's what I'm looking at as a consumer, as a homeowner, as a potential buyer for income property. Tariffs are having an impact right now as far as prices are going to go up. Consumer goods are going up. Home prices will go up. Everything's going to go up. Tariffs, we're trying to cut foreign jobs and bring manufacturing here. Let's take an example. I know that the Trump administration got an approval or a verbal approval from, I don't know if it's Hyundai or Honda, for a $20 billion plant. Okay, that's good news. But let's do the math. Tariffs are having an immediate impact on prices right now. Immediate impact, right? 25% increase in cars, for example, which is going to go effect today or tomorrow, right? But if that plant is going to come in Ohio or Timbuktu or Plano or Austin or Georgia, it's not coming to Orange County for sure. First of all, it's going to take 1 or 2 years to plan and draw that plant. You're talking a $20 billion plant. Second, it's going to take 1 or 2 years for the city to get approval, blah, blah, blah. So am I going to wait 4 years for the job to come by when I'm paying 25% more for latte, 25% more for the cars, 25% more for everything else? In 4 years, I'll be broke. Or the housing market will be in shambles, or the stock market will be in shambles. So I don't really know how to think about it, because the impact, like you mentioned, is not immediate. It takes time. You can't change what we've been doing for 50 years. You cannot change in one day by this and this. And like I said, we're not being political. We're trying to be, mindful to see what the impact is on the housing market, specifically for the sellers, because a lot of the sellers want to move, but they're not moving because of the locked-in interest rate. And that is creating a shortage of inventory, which in turn is creating and keeping the home prices high.
Right.
Builders, right? So carry on with that, where I'm going, if you can kind of see where I'm going.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, the other thing that happens when there's inflation, home prices do tend to go up. They inflate with everything else. So, so that's potentially a good thing if you own a lot of properties, but a very bad thing if you're a first-time buyer trying to buy a home. So there's more bad than good that I see in all of this. The only thing that that could work out possibly, but it really was a big risk, is if this is all just a ploy to get other countries to drop their tariffs on us, which I've heard that argument. Although I don't necessarily see that happening. It's great if it does. And I think that would be in hindsight, I'd be able to say, good job, Trump. You really knew what you were doing. But the risk of doing this and expecting that to happen, the consequences of it, of not happening, are so severe that I just can't believe that anybody actually had the balls, for lack of a better term, to attempt this. It's kind of like as an analogy, I sometimes have home sellers that get all emotional and bent out of shape and over a very small inspection item, and some of them they'll be like, I don't care, I will screw up this $800,000 deal over a light bulb that's not working. And sometimes I have to remind them that that is just and sometimes they go loose cannon and they just say, absolutely not, I will not replace that light bulb. you can, not realizing the consequences of if this deal falls apart and they've already bought another house and they have to be, they're going to have 2 mortgage payments and everything. So I try to keep it in perspective for them, but every now and then there's a loose cannon that does that and actually gets away with it and gets the benefit of not having to change the light bulb,
Right.
and gets the best of the buyer. But it's kind of a similar situation where that's so gutsy,
Right.
because if it doesn't work, the consequences are dire. So,
Right. So that's why I picked this topic, because number one, prices are rising, the economy is slowing, and the government just made a move that could shake your home's value. Are you ready for what's coming? And what's coming, here's potential things that are coming. And of course, I'm reading this from a report. It's not my own opinions, but I've done a lot of research. I've gone to articles, Yahoo and Zillow and Realtor.com. But here's one of the things, what it means for you if you're a homeowner or a home buyer. A couple of things. One, price of building materials, lumber, steel, appliances will go up, and they have gone up. Cost of home repairs and renovations will go up. Number one, if the price costs more, the handyman or the contractor is going to charge you more. On top of that, because of mass deportations and its long-term impact, the labor may cost you more. So that's renovation cost and labor cost going to go up. And the further is, if you're fixing up your solar panels, or if you're fixing up your air conditioning or washer dryer, or updating your home, getting it ready to sell, is going to cost you 10, 20, 1,000 more than on a regular day. But if the prices go up, everything is going to cost you more. That'll make an impact on your net proceeds that you get. So if a house was if you were going to sell your house at $400,000, and if it was going to cost you $3,000 to fix it up, it may cost you $10,000 to fix it up. Buyers may say, hey, you know what? Prices have gone up. I'm not going to buy that. Sink is leaking, fix it. And you may have to fix it even if you didn't want to. Because buyers, like you said, there are loose guns out there. Not all of them, but there's a few out there. And if one of those loose guns is buying your property, if you're a seller, they may back out, and you may have to come out of that money from your pocket. So this is reality right now, I think. And I'll give you an example. I have a house in escrow right now. I'm working with the buyer. I showed a house 45 days ago. It was listed for $1.2 million in Buena Park, which is 10 miles from where I'm at in Anaheim Hills, Orange County, California. Prices dropped. It was overpriced, so we walked on it. We went to the open house. There was a lot of people in there, at least 20 people throughout the day, in and out, 20 to 25 groups, not people. That means 40, 50 people. But after 35 days, they dropped the price by $100,000. I saw it, called my buyer. We wrote an offer. We are in escrow under 1.1. They dropped $100,000. We did an inspection, and we're going to ask for $15,000 to fix it. So in other words, because the prices were high, and now the timing is different, all of a sudden, we didn't even get a counter on our price. They accepted our price. And I just talked to the seller's agent 10 minutes ago before we came on the show. And he said they'll take care of any fixing that we need. It's a vacant house. It's owned by a trust. And this is a direct impact of the tariffs to my advantage to the buyer, because sellers are desperate. They want to sell. It's been sitting. It's been almost 2 months. It's going to take 30 to 45 days to close escrow. And it's vacant. It's costing them insurance, property tax, utilities, everything. So the market is changing when it comes to pricing. It's very critical now that the homeowner sellers price it right, because the buyers are very cautious. They're not going to pay you over asking price. Of course, real estate is local, so our market is still strong. I know Florida and some parts of Texas and other areas is not that strong. How is it in Atlanta area, in your area, Myriad area?
So even within Atlanta, it's too big of an area to kind of put together. There are towns in the Atlanta metro that I could drive to within 25, 30 minutes of me, where it is a buyer's market. Where I am happens to be some of the more high demand area. And I'm still running into bidding wars on houses, multiple offer situations. But I think it's unique to my market
Okay.
here, like a very local market, a 10-mile
Okay.
radius around my house.
Okay. Right.
So,
Okay.
and it also depends on price range. And
Right.
interestingly, it used to be that the most bidding wars were on the first-time buyer homes at the low end. Now I'm seeing those are kind of more negotiable because there's not as many buyers that can afford it. And so the market has shrunk. But it's those intermediate houses, the ones that are not mansions that only, Elon Musk can afford to buy, but also not the first time buy, usually out of the homes that are out of, the second time buyer homes, the ones where they're, because those people are selling a home at a big profit. So they have money to roll into their next home. And that is creating the most demand at that kind of, which in my market is the 800 to 1.2 million-ish range.
Okay.
So it's those are the strongest market.
Right.
I think when you get the ones that are 400 and 500,000 are a little bit more negotiable.
I see. Okay. Now, are you hearing me? You can hear me on the computer, right? Just want to make sure. Sound check.
Yeah, I mean, I turned my computer speaker off so that I'm not hearing you twice. but
you can hear me on your. Okay,
I
got
was
it.
definitely able to hear you. I don't know why mine wasn't.
That's okay. We got you on the phone. So, by the way, sorry for the technical difficulty. If you're watching live or if you're watching a recording after this, it gets posted on YouTube. Make a comments. Let us know what you feel, what's happening in your neighborhood, what's going to be impactful to you as far as the tariffs goes, and any other comments. And also let me know if this time works for you or not. I switched from 4:30 to 1 p.m. today, and I'm going to try to do it for the next 4 weeks at 1 p.m. I may switch it to 12:30, but just kind of trying out the best time for you to watch. So anyway, let's move along. And the other thing I want to talk about, which is very crucial, is right now, as you know, Matthew, I'm sure you and me, we have a lot of equity in our homes. Anybody who bought 2, 3, 4, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like I bought my house 25 years ago, my house tripled or quadrupled. People who bought 7 years ago, the house probably doubled depending on the area. So there's a lot of equity in there. So the question is, inflation and recession, is your equity at risk? I mean, any equity we've gained is a gain, right? We've kept it up to date. We paid our mortgage. We paid the higher property taxes. We've paid the higher insurance. So any equity that we gain is ours. We don't want it to drop. Our home price is due for a correction or a crash. That's a very important question because that means your equity will be taken out of. Interest rates are staying higher and longer. When does affordability break the market? So let's talk about those two things. When it comes to equity, how important is equity for the homeowners and how can they preserve it?
Well, equity is very important. However, I think the best way, we can't do anything to preserve it. It's what's going to happen is going to happen. We can't control the market. We can't, the only thing that's within our control is if we lose equity, maybe you don't sell, wait for it to come back. But there's just, I had a thought while you were talking. I'm trying to remember what it was. But I may have to sit on that for a moment because I lost what I was going to say. I apologize. But yeah, I mean, equity is always going to fluctuate. I don't think people should try to time the market when it comes to buying a home, though. I think, you're not buying short term. I mean, if you're a short term flipper, then yeah, you got to time the market. You got to worry about what is the market going to be in 6 months. But if you're buying a home to live in for the next 10 years, then it doesn't really even matter. You buy when it's right for your personal situation. And worry about that. And there's rarely do home prices go down. And when they do, they don't stay down. So, if you happen to hit one of those, as long as you don't have to sell, you're fine.
Right. One thing that I'm noticing, and you know this too, that our consumer debt right now is the highest in history, which means that on average, and I'm talking about credit card debt, consumer debt, auto debt, not counting the homes. Homes, you have a mortgage, you're going to pay it, whatever. But when you buy a car that's expensive, when you have credit cards that are full, right now, the consumers, you and me, the buyer, the seller, anybody, is feeling the pain of the consumer debt. We all have high balances. And I'm talking on average. You may have zero,
Mm-hmm.
I may have zero, but somebody have a lot. So what's happening is there's a lot of consumer debt. Their credit cards are full. I mean, they're fuller than full. They can barely make minimum payments. What happened, let's go back to 2007, 2005. You were there, I'm sure, Matthew. One of the reasons we had that crash was people borrowed, refinance, pull money out, refinance, pull money out. They leveraged their equity into kingdom come, right? They bought cars and bought horses and elephants and went on vacation, remodeled like crazy. And then the home prices started coming down, right? And they lost their homes. The whole reason I'm talking about this is we're talking about equity. If there's one thing you want to preserve, not an advice, just an opinion as being a parent and being a homeowner myself and worrying about debt, is that if you have equity, don't blow your equity buying things, remodeling, going on a vacation. Protect your equity. That's one way to do it because you can control. If your credit card is full, don't go borrowing on your equity, and then pay your credit card. It may be a good idea. Talk to your financial planner or accountant. But that's what I'm talking about. I mean, what would you say
Mm-hmm.
to a homeowner or a buyer that's full of credit and want to get into the equity?
I mean, I actually have a little calculator tool that will tell people as a
Mhm.
lender, whether it makes sense for them if they have credit card debt at a really high interest rate. Maybe it might be worth doing a cash out refinance um,
Mhm.
to get rid of that. The only caveat to that is that if you're going to do that, it only makes sense if you get your spending under control and you have a budget going forward and you don't run the credit card up again. Because
Mm.
if you're going to run it up again, then you're defeating the purpose and you're putting yourself in a much worse position than you were in had you not done anything.
I see.
But for those that have a lot of credit card debt at a high rate
Mhm.
that have made the decision to be diligent and get control of their finances, it
Right.
it makes sense you can actually lower the amount of total interest that you're paying, because even though the mortgage rates are higher, they're a heck of a lot lower than the interest rates on credit card debt. So,
Mm.
and
Okay.
also, as far as the equity question, I thought of what I was going to say before, and that is that the main thing that the only thing that can really bring home prices down is an
Mhm.
excess in supply. There
Right.
has there got to be more homes that come on the market than there is demand. That's the only way homes are going to go down in value. And
Right.
I don't see, at least in my market, I don't see where that inventory is going to come from. And it's certainly not going to come from new construction if we have the tariffs that are causing the lumber prices and everything to be higher. They're not going to be able to build homes at lower prices and compete with the existing inventory. So I don't see where on the supply and demand factor where the supply of homes is going to come from to drop prices
Right.
substantially in
Right.
most markets.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when it comes to new construction, you hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, first of all, everybody's saying that new construction cost, if anything, more than home prices, resale home values, the price of resale home values is going to be stable. But one thing's for sure, new construction homes will be even more expensive because guess what? 70% of our lumber comes from Canada. And
mm-hmm.
if these tariffs continue, tomorrow Trump administration may say, okay, it's canceled. He's done it before, slap on 25, take it off, slap on 25, take it off. So hopefully we don't see that up and down. But if tariffs are hit, the new construction will be hit hard, right? When it comes to housing, prices are definitely going to go up. So on one hand, going back to equity, going back to why sellers are not selling. One is because they have so much equity and they can use it to buy bigger homes or a second home. But at the same time, they don't want to move because the interest rates are so low at 3%, 4%, 30-year fixed. They don't want to move. So that as long as the inventory stays low, right, home prices will stay up. And then to add fuel to the fire, if the tariffs hit home and if everything goes up, homes will only cost more and more. That'll bring the inventory down, right? If more consumers start buying homes, if interest rates go low and the buyers buy, that's going to increase the demand, and that's going to lower the supply again. So the prices are not going to drop. That's what I'm saying with all this stuff. If you look at the combination, of everything happening.
Yeah, and there are some markets that are dropping, but they're really for other external factors and reasons. Like I've heard certain parts of Florida, but the demand was squelched by the cost of insurance is the big problem there, from what I hear. I'm not in the Florida market, but that's a big factor there.
Right.
Especially like Florida condos, because of that building that collapsed that
right.
is
Yes.
now causing insurance and HOA fees are just so high that people they can't afford it, and they can't justify buying it into that. So.
Right. My gardener is here, so I'm just trying to block some noise or whatever. He's here blowing that air blower, so bear with me a couple of minutes, but you can hear the air blower, can you? The
I cannot.
Okay, so
no, it sounds clear on my end. So.
Good. Okay, so I was trying to block the noise and all that. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, that is a big issue. And the Florida, the other. Okay, good thing you brought up Florida. Guess what's happening in Florida? One reason there's a lot of inventory is because a lot of buyers are not buying there because of the high insurance costs and high HOA. Let me rephrase that: skyrocketing high insurances and skyrocketing high HOA. But you know what the other reason is? There's a lot of inventory. As soon as the tariffs hit, guess what the Canadians did and are doing as we speak in states like Florida, Arizona, Texas, plus other states? A lot of them are putting their homes on the market, and they say, screw US, we're out of here. And a lot of homes that are Canadian homes are coming on the market. So what that does is that increases inventory and law of supply and demand. The more the inventory, the lower the price. Florida is one other case. So two things are happening in Florida. One, high property tax and high HOA, and high move-out ratio of Floridians, especially right now, and the more to come.
And the other thing, the other thing about the tapping into your equity thing and eroding your equity, back in 2008, 2007, when people were doing that, they were they used to allow you to do like home equity line of credit up to 125% of your appraised value.
God. Yeah.
So right now you're capped at 80, maybe 85% loan to value total for your first and your second. So even people that are maxed out and they've done cash out refinances and rolled credit card debt in, there's not one of them that I know of that has less than 15% equity, because the loan simply will not and has not been approved at that high of that low of an equity position.
Right.
So that's a big difference. So for people that are trying to draw parallels, saying, well, people are tapping into their equity more than ever and they're buying other things with them, rolling credit card, it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a crash, because they still have a good amount of equity, and the banks simply will not allow them to give up that last bit of equity, which is the part that keeps them in the game.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it doesn't come in, So let's talk about what are the smart moves can home sellers make, and of course buyers can make also. How homeowners can prepare now. I watched a video last week. It was about, are you ready? And it talked about, what if there's inflation? What if there's a recession? What if there is something happens? Are you ready? Do you have enough funds in emergency funds? etc.? Do you have a savings account? Do you have a retirement account? So let's talk about some of the things you can prepare. So if I'm a home seller or homeowner and I'm thinking about selling, let's take one thing at a time. The first one is sell sooner or wait. What would you do, or what scenario can I think about, as thinking out loud? Wait or
I
sell
mean,
now?
generally speaking, I am a big believer in the philosophy of don't try to time the market. Just you sell when it's the right time for you to sell. Do not worry about trying to time everything, because you can't. It's like trying to time the stock market and know, when should I buy in? When should I sell? I mean, you can't. Yeah, you can't do that. So I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to the view of, like, good time to sell, bad time to sell. The right time to sell is when you're ready and your family's needs are not being met by your current property.
Exactly. So. Yeah, I mean, grandparents, parents moving in with you, or you got a baby, or you got a promotion, or you want a better job or better schools, and do it now. Why wait? Right? I mean, yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, the only thing that could be influenced by the market conditions would be if you want to buy another home. Maybe under certain conditions, I would recommend holding your property and renting it instead of selling it. Sometimes I've always discussed the pros and cons of that. And there's more to it than just the financials, because you're taking on a commitment but if you're willing to take that on, sometimes it can be a financially sound decision. To do that.
Right. So. Okay, cool. Right. What about if I was
one other thing I'd like to say about that, if somebody is selling and buying, unless there's a huge gap in price range from one to the other, they really don't have to worry, because if prices go down, yes, they're going to get less for their house, but they're also going to be able to get a bargain on the one they're buying. And likewise, if prices go up, they're going to pay more for the house they're buying, but they'll get more for the one they're selling. So they cancel each other out, except in the case where if you're selling a $500,000 house and buying a $3 million house, there's a big enough gap that the percentage, if the market goes up by 5%, 5% of 3 million's a lot more than 5% of 5. But if you're going from a 500 to a 600 or whatever, it really doesn't matter, because they're gonna cancel each other out.
Right. The other way that I'm thinking of, if I was to sell, not that I'm thinking, let's say I'm in Anaheim Hills. My average home price, not mine, but the average medium home price in Anaheim Hills is around 1.2 million. And the prices are still going up, they're staying high. So if I was to retire, as an example, right, I can sell high over here. Then I'm thinking, you know what? I'm retiring. I don't have to be near my kids. I don't have to go anywhere. What states is a good bargain right now? Arizona is a good bargain in some areas because of the oversupply. Florida may be a good one. Some parts of Texas prices have come down, right? So I can think that way. And you know what? Florida is, as a consumer, I want to take advantage. And Florida comes to mind right now. There's a lot of inventory, a lot of desperate homeowners who want to sell, and I can pick up some bargains there. So that's another way to think about it. So, but if I have to sell, or I could refinance, pull out some equity, rent this house, and put 200 down over there on a 500, $600,000 house, which I can get a great house in Florida. So that's another way to think about it. So this way I have some cash flow coming in. I have a house, go to Florida, and if I don't like it, I can always come back and rent the other one out, and go vice versa. So there's a lot of things you can think about. So the other question comes to mind. Any comment on that? Go ahead.
No, and Atlanta used to be one of those places that was a good bargain, but I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, the secret got out. We had a lot of people during COVID that moved to Atlanta, and
oh, really? Okay.
Our prices have really gone up a lot.
What's your medium price in your? I know you.
I mean, I still think it's low. It's definitely lower than where you are, but I would say, like, and I'm in like the probably one of the most expensive suburban areas in Metro Atlanta, and I would say an old house, like a 1700 square foot, kind of like ranch or split level kind of thing from that's 40 plus years old. Something like that, you're going to pay in my area around 400,000 to 450. The more like inventory from the 90s, that's more like 2,800 square foot, 4-bedroom homes. Those are going to be more in the 600 to 700 range now.
Okay.
And then, you really have to get up to the 900 to $1 million-ish to get something that's a little more substantial, like a house that's a little more like, that's a really nice house.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they have come up. I mean, they used to be 300, 400, but they've come up pretty high.
Forget it. When I first moved to Atlanta, it was like, even just a few years before COVID, I was selling the houses I used to sell for $150,000. And I'm like, these are like 4-bedroom homes for $150,000.
Man.
But they're now those same houses. Those are the $500,000 and $600,000 houses now.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So the other question is, if I'm a homeowner thinking about moving or selling, what should I do about the upgrades, or if I need to fix things, or even if I was going to stay and just expand a room or do upgrades, what should I do with the tariffs in mind?
I don't know if the tariffs really change things with that. If you're going to sell and you want to do upgrades, I mean, the only thing maybe is do them sooner rather than later, because the effects of the tariffs might not be there yet fully.
Right.
I do think we're going to see the cost of things increase. So probably better to do it now than later. But yeah, I mean, and as far as what to do and what not to do, a lot of that really depends on the specific home. And I say that because there's no blanket rule. Like I can't sit here and say always spend money on your kitchen or whatever. It really, without seeing the property and knowing, because it also matters what your neighbors have done and what your specific neighborhood or community looks like. If nobody else has upgraded their homes and the most recent sales in your neighborhood are all original, non-updated, you would be over improving for the neighborhood, as we would call it, by decking out your house before selling it.
Right.
So before you do that, you need to make sure that there are comparable sales that support the higher price.
Right.
And then you also have to take into account the price range of the home and the types of things that are important to the target market for that particular property.
Right.
I generally do not recommend becoming what I call an in-betweener. You either, for the most part, I mean, there are some very cheap, small things you can do, like paint or whatever on one room, that are worth doing, but you're swapping out some knobs on the existing cabinets or something. But barring that stuff that's so easy and no-brainer to do, I've seen people make the mistake of putting a lot of money, let's say, into a kitchen renovation. So they'll have this beautiful kitchen, but then the rest of the home, the bathrooms and the rest of the home are still dated and not updated. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see sellers make, because then your home is not a move-in ready model showcase home, but you spent all that money on the kitchen, but your target market is still people that have the vision to see what it could be if they remodel the bathrooms, and also have the cash flow to buy the house and then pay for those renovations after closing.
Right.
So,
yep. Okay, cool.
That's why you either take it all the way and do everything so the house truly is move-in ready, or you do nothing and just sell it for a fair price to somebody else who will get that sweat equity.
Right. And keep your cash that you have, not using equity, because when you fix things
I
before you
just
put
lost your audio.
oh, okay.
Like,
How
I don't
about
know
now?
what changed, but
Oh, okay.
did you hit
Nothing.
mute or something on the phone?
No, I can hear you. How about now? I can hear you.
Okay, now I hear you. I don't know
Okay.
what happened, but your audio dropped out on my
Oh,
headset.
okay. No, I can hear you. So anyway, so the next question is smart moves, right? Inflation resistant home investment. So if I was scared, hey, real estate is going to tank or it's going to go down or up, what are some of the other investments they could do to protect their cash flow or retirement? For example, energy upgrades or rental units or stocks, or what can they do? Because now some people may get scared. I don't want to buy another house. Market may crash. I don't want to spend money. What are the alternatives they can do to protect their cash flow or retirement money? And if they want to use equity or other money.
I mean, it all comes down to risk and return. I mean, if you
Exactly. Yeah.
without taking any risk, your only option really is putting it in treasuries,
Right.
and and then you have very low, almost zero risk, but your return is going to be 3 to 4% at best.
Right.
So um, I I don't really see. That's why I like. I do like real estate because it just, for the level of risk, the return that you get is always, it just always works out better
Right. Yeah.
than treasuries. I mean, because there's nothing else you could do if you're close to retirement age, and because you don't want to take risky investments. I mean, risky investments can pay off quite a bit, but
Right.
there's the risk factor. So
Yeah, if you lose it, you may not have time to recover it. I mean, if you're younger,
yeah, it depends.
35,
If
40,
you're in your if you're 35, 40, then take
yeah.
some risk, and
Yeah, you have time to bring it up, but my age, for
right.
example, I can't risk it, so I have to be very careful. Mutual funds and ETFs is what I like at this age. Just nice and steady. I mean, yeah.
I have some that people might be interested. I'm not a financial advisor, but I have money in a fund it's like a special S&P index fund that has hedging in it, where they use options. The fund managers use options to basically make it that you can't lose more than a certain percentage. So they kind of guarantee you. I don't get all of the upside. So if the market goes up incredibly a lot, the more it goes up and the more extreme the increase is, the more I miss out on as far as the gains. But likewise, when the market crashes like it did in the last few days, I think my losses are capped at 10%. I can't.
Right.
You get the upside, but then if it goes down more than 10%, it's like, okay, I had insurance for that, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And they're building the insurance by using options to hedge against the extremes.
Right.
And I like that. I
Yeah,
like
you
that.
got like a circuit breaker. Circuit breaker. You don't lose.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw yesterday, I was on TikTok and I saw several slides. You know what it said? My 401k is now 201k. My 401k is 201k because it dropped so much. And a lot of the seniors have so many 401ks and they're all scratching their heads, so hopefully, so.
Yeah, it would be tough to be like retirement age right now and see all this happening. But I would kind of argue that someone of that age that's like actually at retirement probably should have had the bulk of their money in treasuries and very safe things anyway.
Right.
And if they didn't, then they're kind of paying the price for the risk they took that they shouldn't have taken at that age.
Yeah, what the financial planners say, and of course, we don't recommend anything. We're not financial planners, we're not economists, but what my financial planner has told me is that diversify, put a little bit of everything. Get some stocks, get some real estate, get some ETFs, get some mutual funds, treasuries or whatever. So talk to your financial planner, but we're just talking in general, so. I wanted to touch on something else because this is something that I came across just recently, and I wanted to read it. It's from Rocket Mortgage, and it's on April 3rd, just a few days ago, not counting the weekend. Housing market inflation: what you need to know. I just want to read out a couple of articles here. It says inflation is a hot button topic. Can you see the screen, by the way, the article?
I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So inflation is a hot button topic across the economy, but there's no doubt the effect is more visible in some areas than others. Home prices are certainly a high profile example. Knowing more about housing market inflation will help you figure out the best ways of dealing with it. So will a few topics. So I'm going to jump a little bit and talk about the current state of the housing market and inflation. I'm going to read the first paragraph and maybe we can chat on that, Matthew. It says here that the one major indicator of inflation within the economy is the consumer price index, CPI. Although it's not the Fed's preferred metric, this breaks out shelter and a couple of components of housing costs in a way that PCE doesn't. I'm going to go back up here, and it talks about the CPI, right? I mean, you can't see it too well. I can barely see it, but it went up pretty high, almost, what is it, 5-6%? It's down to 3 or 4. You said you're a mortgage lender. Maybe you can shed some light on this more than I can.
Well, I mean, that was the whole inflation thing that we had after COVID, all the supply chain issues and everything, and the pumping of $3 trillion of money into the economy with PPP and all that stuff. It caused inflation. That's the price that we're paying, and we went through that whole period. I think that the metric that the Fed uses to gauge inflation went up as high as like 9% or even higher, almost 10. At the peak, and then it came back down. So it kind of follows just like that chart.
Right.
And by the way, generally speaking, housing is a good shelter from inflation. Putting your money in real estate. I had a lot of clients that were specifically before, like during COVID, when they knew this financially astute clients of mine, they actually called me up and they said, look, $3 trillion pumped into the economy, supply chain issues. I'm like, we are going to have runaway inflation. They knew this back in like 2020. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And the smart people were actually reaching out to me because they wanted to buy real estate because they're like, that is a place I can put my money. Doesn't have a huge amount of risk. It's never going to go to zero,
Nope.
And it tends to, when there's inflation, the home prices tend to inflate also. So it's a great place to put your money when you anticipate future inflation.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did, and it paid off.
Right. Isn't there also the notion that when the inflation goes up, the interest rate goes up as well, and when the inflation goes down, the rates go down as well in general?
Well, it's actually inversely related. When inflation goes up, one of the only tools that the Fed has to deal with runaway inflation is to raise interest rates, to curtail, to basically to weaken the economy purposely, because the economy is too hot, and that's why we have the inflation. So they raise interest rates, which indirectly tends to raise mortgage rates. So the more inflation we have, the higher mortgage rates you could expect to have. And one of the reasons why at the end of last year, the Fed lowered interest rates by about a percentage point, yet mortgage rates went up. And everyone was surprised, but it's because mortgage rates are long-term interest rates that are based on what they think the future is in terms of inflation. What will the Fed have to do 5 years from now? Not what are they doing right now? And because of that, that's why there's been that separation between the Fed's rate and the mortgage rates. And honestly, these tariffs they're kind of both. It's really weird because they did cause mortgage rates to drop because people are moving money into treasuries, which reduced the 10-year rate.
Right.
But at the same time, there's this looming feeling that inflation's going to get out of control and the Fed's going to have to raise rates to control the inflation. So it's kind of a tug of war between those two factors that are causing a lot of volatility in mortgage rates. They're swinging up and down quarter, 0.5% from one day to the next. And that's why.
Okay. So let's switch some gears. I was reading some articles. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, as you know, because I have a channel of my own. So I watch a lot of YouTube videos, especially that talks about the inflation and the recession and the home pricing and the housing market. One of the words that has come up quite frequently in the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure you heard about it. Let's chat about that. And that is the word recession. I'm sure you came across it. I'm sure you read about it or heard about it in a podcast. There was an articles out there showing that, hey, recession may be coming up. What's your take on it as far as recession goes? Maybe 2 months down the road or 2 or 3 years down the road?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that recession does not in any way equate to home values dropping. Mm-hmm. In fact, there is a chart. I don't have it handy to show right now, but there's a chart that I have that shows what happened to home prices during the last 10 recessions. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they went up almost every one with very few exceptions. So there's not a direct correlation. A recession does not mean your home value is going to drop.
Exactly. So the buyers beware. If the buyers are thinking, oh, let the market crash. If there's a recession, I'll buy lower. Well, two things will happen. One, as you mentioned, and I've seen that chart also, where most recessions, the prices actually went up. The only big one that it went down was during the recession of 2008 when they really crashed. Right. And the other thing is, if I'm a buyer thinking, you know what, I'm waiting for a recession, prices will be low. Guess what? What if you lose a job? Because there's a good chance companies will be laying off, which they've already started. So if you're ready now, buy now, because what during the recession, prices go down, interests go down, but you don't have a job. You know, so that's a risk you take again, right? I mean,
yeah. Although they might be happy they didn't buy if they don't have a job, but they got to pay rent. They got to pay something. So
pay something. Hey, but you know what? You can't live in fear. You know, if I'm going to go on the freeway, I can't think, oh my God, what if Matthew smashes my car or rear ends me? Whatever. He's from Atlanta. He doesn't know the LA traffic, you know. So,
but I mean, I wouldn't be so afraid of the recession. I think it's a business cycle. That's all a recession is, and it gives companies a chance in many ways to regroup and be smarter about things going forward. And, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger in a way. And I think in the long run, a recession's kind of a non-event, unless you're one of the unfortunate ones that lose the job.
Right. And that's why we kept saying, in fact, I just did a video last week, and the topic of the video is get ready. If you're a homeowner, it talks about get ready. If you lose a job, if there's a recession, if there's inflation, if your property tax quadruples like some states have, do you have a reserve? If you just bought a house and now there's a recession and there's a layoff, if you get laid off for 2 or 3 months, are you able to pay that? That's where having an emergency fund comes in handy. And that's why, I have white hair. Matthew, you might have white hair. I should have started saving for retirement much earlier. I told my kids, which are much younger, to start saving from the get-go. I told my daughter when she graduated that once she gets a check, every check she gets, put 5-10% away in your retirement and forget about it. So if you haven't started that, no matter what age, start doing that so that if the market goes down, if you lose a job, if your house equity goes down, you have an emergency fund. And one of the things that Americans lack, two things, first of all, 39% of all Americans, working adults have never bought stocks. 42% don't have any savings account. And how many people live paycheck to paycheck, let alone losing a job and just bought a house? It's
Yeah, I
scary.
mean, it is easier said than done, though. If you put on, it's easy for me to say as somebody that has that. I have the savings and everything, but like that 42% or whatever of people, those are the people that it's because their wages just don't provide enough money to put food on the table, take care of their kids, take care of the immediate needs like getting their car repaired when it breaks and paying their rent or whatever. They're living check to check, and you can't. I was there when I was in my 20s and I just got out of college. I didn't have, I may have known that it's a good idea to put 10% of your income away in savings, but I couldn't do it. It just wasn't going to happen. But there are people that do make enough where if they would put their mind to it and create an actual budget and not, and once in a while say no to the extra fancy dinner out or whatever, that can make a big difference in their long-term financial stability. But not everybody has that luxury to. I definitely understand there are people that just can't do it.
No, I understand. Yeah, but you got to make an effort. Maybe when you get married, or when or you have a friend or a spouse, or at some point, like when you were a college teenager or a student or what, you could not. But then you got a proper job. You probably got a better job. If you were making 25,000 as a fresh graduate, after 2 or 3 years, your salary increased. I'm sure at some point you can put $50 away, $25 away, create that habit. So when you're 25, you're saving $50 a month. But when you're 30, now you're saving $100 a month. If you're getting married, now instead of 2 rents, you have 1 rent. If you really think about it, what they say, where there's a will, there's a way. So if you really want to save it, can you cut back on that $15 McDonald's combo? Take a sandwich at work. How much is that lunch costing you? $10 a day times 20 days that you work. That's $200.
Or a foolish thing I see people do is spend a fortune on car payments. They'll buy a car. They got to have that fancy brand new Mercedes, and the car payment's $900 a month. I'm like, my God, if you buy yourself a car that, a beater that's reliable, but gets you from point A to B, take all that extra money that you're putting into a fancy car payment and put it in a savings account. Put it away for the rent. You will be so much better off.
No, there's always a way to save. Let me give you a quick example. I've been playing golf for 25 years. I go with lots of different kind of people, especially youngsters. And it amazes me that when you go play for golf, 3-4 days ahead, you're going to go play golf, right? When I want to go play, I'm ready. I have the golf clubs ready. I have enough balls. I have gloves. I have clubs. I would be amazed to tell you how many times I go to the golf club. My buddy comes in. Oh, guess what? I forgot my glove. I forgot balls. And they're paying $10 for clubs at the golf course. The same one that cost in Target $2. Why'd you forget your balls? You're paying $12 for 3 balls. You could have gone to Target and paid $3 for it. That's what I'm talking about. It's a change. If you really want to save, you got to put your frugal hat on. The only way to save is you have to think frugal. And in fact, the richest people in the world are I know there's a word like that, are the frugalest people in the world,
I am frugal, and I rarely pay full price for anything. Exactly. When I buy stuff, there's always a coupon. There's always a deal.
Oh, yeah.
And I measure that stuff. If I'm saving, a couple of dollars here and there, I feel good about it because I'll take that couple of dollars, and that's more that I have to invest.
Yeah.
And it's a goal of like putting that money away.
Right. I like to wear nice shirts and nice pants and nice shoes. Guess what? I go to Nordstrom Rack. I don't go to Nordstrom unless I really have to go. I have a wedding or something, but I shop around. I mean, on $100 shirt, if you save 25%, that's $25.
I buy all my clothes off season. I buy my winter stuff in the summer and vice versa. Go straight to the clearance rack in the back where they're 60, 75% off. I even have shopped at, there's a store here called Uptown Cheapskate, which is used clothing, but
Yeah.
it's quality used clothing, name brand stuff right from Nordstrom. And some of it is people trade stuff in there that has the tags on it that's never been worn.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
And you're paying like a fraction. You'll get like $150 shirt for like $10 in that place, and some really nice stuff. So
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's some good pointers. So, you know, coming down when it comes to housing, when it comes to upgrading, when it comes to buying and selling, yes, you want to look for the best price, the best upgrades, or the cheapest labor, you know, whatever. When you want to buy something, you want to buy the lowest price. But as Matthew had said earlier, if you're ready to sell and buy, or if you're ready to buy, don't chase the market, because you don't know what's going to happen. You know, I've had friends and I've had buyers telling me since 2019, I'm going to wait till the market crash. The same people told me that in 2020. The same person told me in 2021. Finally, they bought in 2022 and they paid $100,000 more for waiting. $100,000 more.
Yeah. I have people that are still waiting since 2019.
Me too.
And they're waiting for it to come back to 2019 affordability. And meanwhile, they're paying $2,000-$3,000 a month every month in rent.
And they did not get the tax deduction. They did not get any deduction.
Nothing to show. Nothing to show for it at all.
Right.
And
it's sad. And now they cannot afford it because they're priced out. They can't afford it. You know, the DTI is too high, or what your debt to income ratio, they cannot afford to buy because the prices have gone up, and the rates that were 4% are now 6.5%. So they're out of the market now.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, any last pointers that you want to make as far as tariffs and how to get prepared if you're a homeowner, what you should do? Last comment.
No, I mean, I think the takeaway is just don't get so hung up in the news and the tariffs and whatever. Just go about your business. If your home that you're in is, if you're renting, do everything you can to get yourself in a position to buy. And if you're already in a home and you want to buy a bigger home or downsize to a smaller home, whatever your needs are, just do it when the timing's right for you. Don't try to time the market. That's the takeaway from this entire conversation.
Right. And if I have a takeaway, and if I have a takeaway, not that I want to give it away, but since you gave a takeaway, I'll follow up with a takeaway.
Sure.
That especially in the coming market, now it's a different market. April 2nd changed the housing market. The Liberation Day has totally changed the housing market. Number one, because of tariffs. No, number two, because of tariffs. You know, number one, why? It's a mental. People got kicked mentally. So what I have to say is, whether you're buying or selling, buy or sell below your means. You know, don't overstretch. Everything's going to get expensive. Right. If you're going to buy a car, you know, if you're going to buy a car for $40,000, look for a $35,000 car. If you're buying a house for $400,000, buy a $350,000 home. So buy below your average. Be more frugal, and don't give a crap about what your friends and neighbors say. They don't care. They're not going to help you pay your mortgage when you're in trouble. So don't worry about what they think about what kind of house you buy.
Yeah. And when you're making large purchases, be smart about it and do the research. If you're buying a car, use things like TrueCar and stuff like that, so you know what you're paying, and don't get caught up in the tricks that dealerships do. Yeah. In fact, you know, they try to merge together the financing and all that but don't just focus on your payments. Right. Focus on what you're actually paying for the car, you know, exactly. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens next week. Let's see what the repercussions are. The Dow Jones was not as bad today, but I know the last I checked. In fact, let's check it quickly.
Yeah, last I checked, it was actually up slightly. At least the S&P and the NASDAQ.
Yeah. So let me see. Dow Jones. It's what time is it? It's 2:00 in LA. So it's already closed now. We're almost ready to close. It's down 438 points as of today, 2:00. So.
Right. Yeah, that's the Dow. But
the Dow,
the NASDAQ's actually up 0.1%. The S&P S&P's down, but it's less than 0.25%, not a substantial drop.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a bumpy ride. That's why you need to get frugal, get that retirement account going, and we'll see you here next week at 1 p.m. Sorry, I had to change the times. I see that I've lost some viewers, but I'll gain some new ones because of the time change. So Matthew, thank you so much. If anybody has a question regarding Atlanta or need a realtor or lender in the Atlanta area or in the East Coast, I'm going to put Matthew's information in the description. If you need help or have any questions, need a realtor to talk to in the West Coast or any other states, make a comment and I'll refer you to a top-notch agent who's aware with the trends and he knows what they're talking about. So thanks for watching.
I put my contact info in the chat as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay, right. Okay, good. Pick it up and I'll put it in the description of my YouTube channel as well. So thanks again, Matthew, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week at 1 o'clock. Bye-bye.